Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted. From Packers.com, I am Mike Spofford, joined, as always, by my trusted colleague, Weston Hodkowitz. We are coming to you old school, I guess you could say. Little did I know when I powered through last Thursday's episode with that terrible voice, it was just the start of something. Not good for me to come back into the office just yet. So we pulled out the technology that helped us out in the past, and we're back on the air, Wes. And this time it's to talk about a Packers victory, 28-19 over the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. And when you start the discussion of this game, it all starts with the fourth quarter, because through the first three quarters, this game was not looking good for Green Bay.
No, it wasn't, Mike. And I was sitting there, especially when Chicago's driving again, and you're kind of thinking like, man, even if the Packers get some answers here, are they going to be able to stop them defensively? But and Alan Lazard talked about in the post-game locker room, there were so many parallels between this game and the Dallas game last month, where they actually had the first comeback in the fourth quarter. And to me, I mean, between the special teams coming through with the blocked field goal, Jair Alexander getting an interception, he got burned twice on those deep completions. He bounces back, responds the way you want to see him respond, gets a big pick, and the Packers scoring points off of that pick. And certainly, Christian Watson once again doing his heroics late to really put this thing on ice for Green Bay. All season long, Mike, 13 games, they've been trying to find a complementary performance. I felt like in all three phases, they found it at Soldier Field.
Yeah, it finally came together there down the stretch. And as you said, the complementary performance, when things started happening Green Bay's way in the fourth quarter, they kept going that direction. I thought a couple of key turning points in this. One, for the offense, I thought when Christian Watson drew that pass interference penalty, 38 yards, Packers were down at that point in the game, 19-10, I believe was the score. That 38-yard pass interference penalty then set up the 21-yard touchdown run by A.J. Dillon. Suddenly, it felt like a brand new game at that point. And then on the defensive side, you mentioned Alexander had gotten burned for a couple of big plays. The Packers also early in the game got burned for a big play when Justin Fields ran for a 55-yard touchdown. Packers, they're giving up too many big plays still, but I thought the turning point was the response to the big catch by N'Keal Harry down the sideline, which was the second time that Alexander had gotten beat deep. The defense rose up 3 plays to force a field goal. And then on top of that, Dean Lowry blocks the field goal to keep the score 19-17 there. We've seen so many times over the course of the season when the Packers defense has given up a big play, it hasn't responded to that very well. And it has almost always led to points and often touchdowns for the opponent. That sequence right there, I thought was a big step forward in winning this game and completing a comeback that was actually 13 points in the first half when the Packers were down 16-3.
Yeah, they've had some monumental comebacks here. When you look at, I think last month with the Cowboys, that was the first time the Cowboys had lost the game in the fourth quarter where they'd been up. I think they were like 150-0 by 14 points where they've had that type of lead. The Packers came back from it. Same thing in this one. I mean, that's, I think, the largest comeback the Packers have had at Soldier Field against the Bears. So it speaks to the mental toughness of that team. But you wrote about it in your Monday morning insider inbox. Dean Lowry is really the unsung hero of this game. One, we could talk about the blocked field goal here in a minute, but Kenny Clark was the one to point this out in the post-game locker room. I thought it was worth mentioning because so many eyes were on Equanimeous St. Brown catching that 56-yard against Jair Alexander. But on that play, milliseconds before Fields throws that ball, Dean Lowry lays him out, gets a really nice hit on him. And after that first quarter where they gave up 71 rushing yards to Justin Fields, Luke Gutsy, Fields, they were not running him anymore after that. They asked him to be more of a pocket type quarterback that allowed the Packers to hone in a little bit on David Montgomery. And other than that explosive in the second half to Harry, really, I thought for the most part, the defense played really well. Getting back to that field goal, though, my goodness, if the Bears get points there, if they go up by 5 at that point, Green Bay Packers, they're not in a position that a Mason Crosby 32-yarder is going to put them ahead.
Going for it on fourth down, then, when the Packers get into scoring territory, they're going to go for it. You're not going to kick a field goal at that stage if you're down by 5 points.
And in terms of the Packers needing to find some type of answer, needing a phase like special teams to really pick them up. It was incredibly required because yes, you had the forced fumble early on from Rasul Douglas. You had it recovered by Rudy Ford. The Packers weren't able to get points off of that drive. At the end of that game, Green Bay, when I talk about complementary football, not only did they create takeaways, not only did they make big plays in phases where you're not necessarily going into a game expecting a Dean Lowry block, it's what the Packers did after those plays. It has been the kind of rabbit they've been chasing all season. And from that regard, I thought that was probably the most encouraging thing about this performance. The Packers at 4-8 going into this game, really looking up at a lot of different teams here. They could have packed it in going into the end of that third quarter, and instead they came together.
Yeah, well, in a big moment, obviously, at the end of the first half as well, with the Packers getting into scoring position. Score is 16-3. It's 4th and 4 from Chicago's 14-yard line. I'll be honest, Wes, and I said it in the live blog, I'm kicking the field goal there. It's still the first half, 16-6. Just go in at halftime, down by 10. You got plenty of time to come back against this Bears defense. Matt LaFleur was having none of it. He felt like the Packers were going to have to score a lot of points to win this game. Settling for a field goal there. He didn't like it. He went for the touchdown, gutsy, bold call, and a little bit of a scramble drill. And guess who's on the same page with Aaron Rodgers on a scramble drill there? The rookie second-round pick, Christian Watson, a 14-yard touchdown. Huge risk there, because if you don't get the touchdown and you go in at halftime down 16-3, you're really not feeling good about this game. But that was such a huge lift for the Packers. I know when we're at the games, we don't get to go into the locker room at halftime, but I can only imagine there was a certain amount of energy in that locker room at halftime, even though the Packers were down by 6. It felt different even at that point.
Well, and to add a little bit more context too, to your comment about kicking the field goal, why that also would have seemed possibly like a prudent decision. They just lost a yard with Aaron Jones, the play before that when they tried to run it. My guess is when they ran the ball, they're thinking, okay, well, we'll either get the first down or we'll get close to it. Then we're in another position. At 4th and 4, you basically have to pass the football. Yeah. And for Christian Watson, we hear the term plaster. We talk about defensive backs, extended plays. The counter to that is you have to plaster on your man. Christian Watson, with his size and his speed, that is not an easy assignment for anybody. And when the Packers are sending him on these deep crossers, I wrote about it last week, Mike, it is the ultimate weapon right now for this offense, because it's not just your typical slant. It's not typically your drag route. It is him taking that thing upfield. And once again, as he's catching those balls, getting more confidence, more and more dangerous the rookie becomes.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned earlier too, Dean Lowry, kind of the unsung hero with the blocked field goal. Other unsung heroes in this game, Zach Tom, the rookie, steps in at left tackle for David Bakhtiari, who had an emergency appendectomy on Friday. I know a little something about that, by the way. So Bakhtiari couldn't play this time, unlike the Washington game, which the Packers made the decision to go with Tom at left tackle right before the game because Bakhtiari's knee wasn't feeling well. At least Tom got one day of, full day of practice on Friday as the number 1 left tackle, was able to prepare mentally and everything else that goes into getting ready for the game. The Bears don't have the best pass rush. Robert Quinn was traded, Roquan Smith was traded. Jack Sanborn, the undrafted linebacker out of Wisconsin, he's going to be a terrific player. He already is a player. But in terms of the front four for the Bears and the pass rush getting after the quarterback, they weren't able to do a whole lot of it. Zach Tom really, really held up well. It was the type of performance from the offensive line that the Packers certainly needed, with Aaron Rodgers dealing with the sore ribs and everything. So shout out to Tom there. We'll see, exactly if or when David Bakhtiari might be able to come back. It's very uncertain at this point, recovering from an emergency surgery like that. And then the other thing you have to point out too, Sammy Watkins. Things haven't gone as well as anybody would have hoped for Watkins coming in as a free agent and, being a veteran presence and hoping to, ease this transition to the post Devontae Adams receiving core. But Sammy Watkins threw 2 really, really crucial blocks in this game. One on A.J. Dillon's touchdown run, which was off of faking the jet sweep and Dillon going the other way. And then on the 46-yard jet sweep run by Christian Watson to seal the game. Sammy Watkins throws really the only block that Watson needed, because nobody else for the Bears was anywhere close to him. The whole side of the field was wide open. So wanted to shout out Sammy Watkins as well. It was pretty cool to see him throw the block and put the number one, the fist up in the air right away after that, because he knew as well as anybody else who was in that stadium that was a touchdown as soon as that block was thrown.
Yeah, that was my favorite takeaway, is that image of Christian Watson, extending down the field, and you see, Watkins in the background there celebrating. Also got to give a shout out to Sammy Watkins, because on Friday, Mike, you might have remembered this back when you were having some younger kids around the household. It was the Packers holiday family Christmas party. And my son, you've had a chance to, I think, meet him now a couple times.
Yes,
he's the most extroverted little 4-year-old you've ever met. And we were at the crafts table while we were waiting to meet Santa Claus, and Sammy and his family came up, and his daughter's beautiful young family, they were at the crafts table. Well, my son, because again, being the most extroverted probably person in the entire family, quickly made friends with Sammy, was trying to share pens with him and everything. And kudos to Sammy, a true pro, handled that very well. Was very nice with my son. And to see him succeed in that way. I mean, the Packers this season, Mike, they went into the year talking about, when it comes to blocking receivers, Allen Lazard and Sammy Watkins are two of the best in the business. And to see that area of the game come through for them, because it wasn't just that play for Watson. Over in the other side of the locker room, A.J. Dillon talked about his touchdown run. Watkins was blocking on that as well, helping kind of not a crackback block, but sort of the seal block with Zach Tom to spring Dillon to the end zone. The Packers have been so good at that. When we talked earlier this season about running the football, it wasn't just, well, they can't throw it, they have to run it. It was how they built the offense to run the football. And this game, especially with Aaron Jones, and my goodness, that the next time the Packers play at Soldier Field, I might just have Aaron as like a healthy scratch. It's just, there's something about that field where he just always seems to have some type of thing that pops up. But when they went to A.J. Dillon in this game, Dillon responded the right way. And I loved Aaron's quote afterwards about it when he's asked about being, Dillon kind of taking the lead at the backfield. He said, hey, when a dog is being a dog, you got to let the dog be the dog. And certainly Dillon, you could tell how much that meant to him. This newly, as we found out, expected father, being able to do that little celebration as well with the rocking the baby. So positive signs all around. Unfortunately for the Packers, as we know, Mike, they've dug themselves into a little bit of this hole, but I thought the way that they rallied back when they could have easily folded definitely spoke volumes about this football team.
Yeah, and for those who like to dig into the film clips and stuff, a little bit of self-promotion here. The Christian Watson jet sweep 46-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter. I went through the game film. What you might have missed, it's up on Packers.com. You can go through all the clips. It was the 8th time in the game that the Packers ran Watson in motion all the way across the formation. And the first 7, they ran all kinds of other plays. There were pitches this way, pitches that way, play action pass, straight drop back pass, all kinds of stuff. Of course, the first 7 times, Watson did not get the ball. The 8th time he did. If you go and look at the plays, I would say 5 of the first 7 were very successful plays anyway. And then obviously the big, the kill shot at the end with Watson. So it's fun film to go through. It's cool to look at. So be sure to check that out.
And if I may, be sure to check that out. It's great stuff from Michael. But, the thing about Soldier Field is we are in a corner of the end zone over there. And there aren't always great imagery of the on-field action. That play and also the touchdown pass, both actually we had great vantage points on. What was so astonishing about that is you could see Chicago try to react to what Green Bay was doing, and they bit hard on the run. But I also bit hard on the run. And it wasn't until Christian Watson is steps away from the sideline did I realize he had the football. And at that point, Mike, you watched the film, you broke it down. There's a few people even standing close to him the rest of the way. I mean, that's the dangerous thing about him.
There's nobody close to him. When you watch it, it's pretty remarkable. And you see, and the AJ Dillon touchdown run that we've been talking about, that was another one too, where Watson is on the jet sweep, and that that action pulls a couple of guys, makes it just, even if the guys don't move necessarily, but it can make them hesitate as to, to their reaction to where the ball is actually going. And that hesitation allowed AJ Dillon to get through there with those good blocks by Tom and Watkins to create that lane. So it's really fun film to watch. It was a good one to go through. Packers now 5-8. Obviously the idea is to try to win out, to try to get above 500. You see where other things fall. And we can talk about some of those other results here coming up in a minute, Wes, but I will take care of the sponsor business. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, 50 years of better. All right, elsewhere around the league, in week 13, a lot of interesting things to touch on. The Giants and the Commanders play to an overtime tie in the first of their 2 games this season. That could be very interesting here. If the Packers do get on a run, I don't want to get into it too much yet, but if the Packers get on a run, we're going to be talking about that Giants and Commanders tie. The Vikings pull out another close one, holding off the Jets at the goal line a couple of times down the stretch. Minnesota gets a win there, holding off a big Jets comeback. Couple questions I want to ask you. The 49ers get a big win over the Miami Dolphins, but they lose Jimmy Garoppolo. They are now down to Brock Purdy as a third string quarterback to try to lead what I think is a really, really good 49ers team. Where do you see things going for the 49ers from here? And then my other question for you is, do the Cincinnati Bengals somehow have the Kansas City Chiefs number? They've beaten them 3 times in a row now. Who's beaten Patrick Mahomes 3 times in a row?
Yeah, I don't know.
Joe Burrow has.
Right.
Look out. I mean, wow.
Yeah, first and foremost, Brock Purdy did everything he needed to do to manage that football game once he went in, and he's not going to get help. He's the man now. Yeah. My biggest takeaway from that game, though, it isn't going to be about Brock Purdy. I think San Francisco's playoff hopes is going to go back to the guy that they sort of wagered their season on, which is Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey is a versatile, dynamic playmaker, but he hasn't been the same running back out of the backfield this season. They're going to need more from him in that area, and it's going to be key to their hopes, because if you don't have your number 2 or number 3 quarterback, what did the Packers learn, back in 2013? You better have a really good running back, and you better have a really good offensive line. That's where San Francisco's hopes and fortunes are going to lie. As far as the rest of this week kind of shuffled out, I thought New York and Washington tying was just the perfect sort of culmination of just what that division has been this year, and just the insanity of it all. I mean, and from Washington's perspective, that tie really hurt them in that they fell behind Seattle now because of Seattle's comeback over the Rams. Seattle now is that number 7 seed in this playoffs hunt. So I really tying it into where the Packers are at, if I may, really quickly. Brian Gutekunst talked to the media on Monday, as did Matt LaFleur, and the Packers have 4 games to go, and the only thing they can worry about is winning. But seeing how the East shuffles out, seeing about whether or not San Francisco can weather Garoppolo's, absence, and, can Seattle rally for all of its flaws around Geno Smith? This is such an intriguingly high stakes year in the NFC, Mike, because I've said it once, I've said it a million times. I think any of these 7 teams that make the playoffs have a chance. The Detroit Lions this week, Mike, going into this upcoming week, are actually favored right now over the Minnesota Vikings, the number 2 seed, as that game will be played at Ford Field. So they're obviously getting the home advantage. But the fact that that's even a consideration right now, with the Lions being on the outside looking in with Green Bay, I think speaks volumes about how this conference and things have shuffled out.
Yeah, well, this weekend, that Lions game at Ford Field in Detroit against Minnesota, I mean, for right now, you call that the biggest game of the Dan Campbell era to this point, right? I mean, because really for the Lions, it's are they going to stay in the playoff race down the stretch and give themselves a chance? And put people on notice potentially by beating a 2-loss Minnesota team that's won so many close games here along the way? Or are the Lions not quite there yet, and they're going to fade down the stretch? There's a lot of excitement. They were fired up in Detroit for that Thanksgiving game against Buffalo, and they took a really good Buffalo Bills team all the way to the wire before losing. I think that game on Sunday against the Vikings is going to be a full 60-minute battle against Dan Campbell's boys there.
And
one other thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I was just going to say, and for all the random games that the Vikings have won this season, this would be a good time for Minnesota to finally, pull a rabbit out of its hat that actually benefits the Packers. That's going to be the other thing too. I mean,
good way to look at it.
They're 10-2 and they've won all these 1-score games. They've had all these type of weird comebacks, and it's like, okay, well, now this week go into Ford Field and actually take care of business. Yeah.
One other thing I want to ask you before we go, the Las Vegas Raiders, they have suddenly gone from 2-7 to 5-7 with 2 overtime victories and then another down to the wire victory over a division rival in the Chargers.
Yeah.
Davante Adams is absolutely going off statistically. His numbers are going off the charts. Are the Raiders just maybe putting some teams on notice in the AFC that just like last year when Rich Bisaccia was their interim coach down the stretch and they made a run for a playoff spot? Are the Raiders doing this again?
Yeah, I don't know if this one is about the win one for the McDaniels, but it was that line that came out during the heart of their doldrums about, potentially could Derek Carr be cut at the end of the season? Are there, considerations they're going to have to make? Davante Adams knows what he's saying, and he knows how to play football. And I really thought, him reiterating again that I'm here because of Derek Carr speaks volumes about, the motivation and the feelings that those two guys, have for each other and the mutual respect there. They don't want this to be a one and done type arrangement. They wanted this to be something that propels, Davante to a potentially a Hall of Fame career, and hopefully, in the Raiders' sake, a Super Bowl type run. That has not happened this season, but they did pull themselves back into it. The challenge for the Raiders, though, is going to be, I honestly believe, the talent element of this. They have some good offensive skill position players. They have, Max Crosby on defense, but Chandler Jones, largely underperformed this season. And there's been a dearth of depth at other positions. So, but in the game of, looking at the AFC, the Jets right now are sitting at 7 and they're 7-5. The Raiders are 5-7. There's plenty of teams still looking to get through the back door in that conference.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating down the stretch and in both conferences. And hey, if the Packers can keep winning and stringing some victories together, it could get even more interesting here in Green Bay.
Hey, I'm going to put you on the spot too.
Okay.
How old will Tom Brady be when he retires? Is there a 5? Does it start with a 5?
Yeah. No, I don't think it starts with a 5, but I mean, how long? I mean, wasn't George Blanda still kicking field goals at like 48?
49, I think.
49, is that what it was? Something like that. Yeah, I mean, who knows, right? I mean, boy, pretty remarkable though. I actually didn't realize until seeing the statistics after the game that the only time in his career previously that Tom Brady had come back from 13 or more down in the fourth quarter was the Super Bowl against the Falcons when they had that really big deficit. So he's obviously pulled up plenty of comebacks that were fewer than 13 points, but that one and boy, what a kick in the gut for the New Orleans Saints to play the way they did on the road, prime time at a division rival for 55 minutes and then to have it just unravel like that on both sides of the ball. Just a tough one there. I think Dennis Allen after the game said, it stinks, it sucks, it's this, it's that. I mean, what else is he going to say, right? I mean, that was a gut punch.
Because as much of a train wreck as this, Saints offense has been this year and the litany of injuries they've had defensively, that's been their calling card. And to lose that game 5 minutes to go and to see that kind of comeback, that's incredibly demoralizing in a division where if you win that thing, you're a game out or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
if the Saints are looking like, hey, they're going to win a big division game on the road, and they'll be 5-8 and right in the thick of the division hunt because of what they would have just done to the Buccaneers. I mean, the way that game flipped in the last 5 minutes, huge implications for that entire division. The Saints could have the Saints could have kept that whole division in the division race essentially if they had hung on to that one. But yeah, the Buccaneers pull it out. It certainly looks like Tampa Bay will be back in the playoffs, and they will get a home game as a division champ against most likely the whoever the number 5 seed is, which would be the top wild card. So we could end up, I mean, if you looked at it right now, the top wild card would be the Dallas Cowboys, right? So you'd have Tom Brady against Mike McCarthy in the first round of the playoffs. But anyway, we could spend the rest of the day talking about all of those scenarios, but we will let our producers go so they can put the final cut on this show and get it out to the masses. So with that, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team through the bye week into next week, leading up to Monday Night Football against the Rams. We will have it all for you on Packers.com. For Wes, I am Mike. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time.